Welcome back to the Origin Show. Happy to be joined by a former two-term city councilman, kind of a lifetime in public service. His name is Brandon Johnson. Brandon, nice of you to join us. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you knew the term limit obviously was coming up. You had the ceremony for you, the swearing in for Mr. Shepard. But was there some suddenness to it? Do you feel like now, what do I do with myself?
Yeah, the suddenness, you plan on it, but a lot of the big projects I've been working on kind of came up in December, so it was like work, and then done. So now I'm just kind of sitting around and trying to unplug just a bit, get some rest, and I wish Councilmember Shepard good luck. He jumped into a lot of stuff this coming week.
You spent 8 years as the council person for District 1. Tell me about District 1, what you grew to appreciate about it, what you grew to admire about it. You obviously had some familiarity with it before your term, so what did you come to learn and know and appreciate about District 1?
Yeah, so I grew up in District 1 most of my life, except for a couple years in the dorms at Friends. And running for office, you just kind of learn how diverse the district is, how many awesome people are there, how many city employees live there. But then just the diversity of issues, the things that people care about. One neighborhood, their top issue might be loose dogs. Another neighborhood might be losing postal service. So it was a lot of, really growing and understanding that, getting to know awesome neighborhood leaders and neighborhood presidents. That was great as well, but I grew a greater appreciation for the people in District 1 and just all the issues and how people engage and trying to find ways to engage people where they are. Everyone talks about, sometimes how they don't know information, but we would door knock, we would do social media, we would do neighborhood association meetings, our District 1 breakfast, everything that we could. But just seeing the diversity of the district, and it changed even while I was in office.
Take me back to 2017. You're involved in the community, obviously, but now you're going to run for city council. What are that guy's ideals? What did that guy want to get accomplished? What was that guy's perception of Wichita and of District 1 at that time?
It's almost the same. I just wanted to make a difference. And, that's not always enough for people, but I knew, like, at the heart of everything, I wanted to make a difference. I grew up in the district. I didn't feel like there was enough investment in neighborhoods and parks and things like that. And I learned kind of why over the years, but that was kind of a focus of mine, was to really just make that type of impact. And I think today it's still the same thing, just wanted to make a difference. And that guy was an activist who had been working on police reform, wanted to get in and make an immediate impact there, really wanted to refocus the city on looking at smaller businesses, helping those folks, minority-owned businesses. And running was interesting because I'm actually a quiet guy by trade. Like, I really am quiet. I'll sit in the background.
That makes two of us.
Yeah, but having your name on billboards and on the radio and going out and really selling yourself was a lot for me. But it was for a greater good to make that impact. So that guy didn't fully know what he was getting himself into. When you get in and I don't think anyone's always 100% prepared to be a council member, but when you see the type of demand that you have and the issues and the ability to make an impact, I loved it from the start. It was a lot, but I wanted to make a difference. So anytime somebody would reach out with an issue, getting them connected with staff, being able to handle that, it was a real big deal.
You talked about, this neighborhood might need this, and this neighborhood might need that, and this group of people might need something. Is the goal to make everyone happy? Do you try to pick your battles? And if so, how do you go about doing that?
You pick your battles. I think the goal is to make everyone happy knowing that you won't. So you just do your best. Sometimes that outcome's good, sometimes it's not. A lot of my more heartbreaking, hard times were when people would reach out with housing issues and I couldn't do anything about it, or what I could do wasn't enough. That's why December was a big deal for me, getting a lot of the strengthening of code and giving more power to the city to deal with absentee landlords. Those are tough when you can't help. And then, there's folks who don't know you, who think you don't care, and they say all types of stuff like that. But, you just put your head down every day, try to work to make an impact, address those issues. But the hard days are when you can't, or when the city faces, massive issues like COVID, or the 737 MAX issue that we had, or, having large deficits. Those things are tough, but it's worse when you can't help somebody and you want to.
How do you feel like city council evolved over the time you were there? Obviously multiple mayors, multiple other city council people, multiple issues that you had to tackle over the course of 8 years. What changed over those course of years, good or bad or indifferent?
One thing is I never thought I would see multiple mayors and then multiple council members like that. But I think council really began to shift. Early on, there wasn't a whole lot of focus on neighborhood issues, and I saw that begin to shift with the aquatics plan, making sure we did have more swimming pools, more water playgrounds, seeing those investments, getting the library expansions going with our branch library systems. I saw council kind of refocus more on those things and really get into the issues I cared about. We even created a concrete streets fund, and I'd been wanting to see older neighborhood streets replaced, but those are the most expensive. So I saw council go, towards that. And now I wouldn't say council has changed a whole lot going backwards, but there are, some voices that don't see those things as important as they have. So I'm glad we made the investments that we did. My hope again, and I said it in my speech when I left, was I hope that council continues to put those quality of life issues first and foremost, because that's what impacts most people.
What was your relationship like with our current mayor, Lily Wu? What do you hope that or expect maybe for her to get accomplished over the next couple of years, and just what did you see as far as her relationship with the city?
Yeah, I've actually gotten along with every mayor we've had, to include Mayor Wu, and pretty much every council member. My hope, again, I think she's looking at finding ways to build trust, and I think sometimes we go backwards on information. Some citizens have come to the council with issues from a quarter century ago, and we'll really focus on that rather than the changes that we have made. We are more transparent. I think the council's more trustworthy, and I understand why some in the public would disagree. But if you really look at those websites, reach out to us and talk to us about things. We do listen, we do engage in that way. And again, I hope that the current mayor just, really looks at those quality of life issues. And we usually hear something different. Even when we talked about property taxes, she would always highlight that she always heard more people talking about cuts. But, when you come to my District 1 breakfast in some neighborhoods, people are saying, no, we need more services from the government, or we need to improve services. And so they didn't mind the property tax increase. So really, I would just hope that not only her, just everyone keeps every perspective in mind and makes the best decision for Wichita, and really think about what those long-term impacts are.
When did you decide or see public service as an avenue for you? You were pretty young when that kind of light bulb went off in your head, weren't you?
Yeah, so as an activist, I just had people talking to me about it. Former Mayor Brewer, we were on opposite sides of an issue, and we'd talk about that from time to time, and he really kind of taught me what local government was and how you reach consensus and how you need 4 votes, and that was kind of his strength, was being able to get consensus around things. I didn't want to be an elected official. I liked being an activist. I could bring issues to the mayor or council or whoever I was dealing with, because I dealt with more than the city council. And then we'd make progress and we'd keep moving, but there was a lot of encouragement from neighborhood folks and former electeds, current electeds. Senator Fausto was one of those people. Representative Finney at the time all encouraged me to think about it. They thought I could, make an impact. And my real ability was just bringing people together around tough issues. And that was one of the things on the council. We could talk about a tough issue and you may not agree with it, but I'll bring you to the table. Let's talk about it and try to find a solution to it.
Yeah, so growing up, you played football at Friends.
Yep.
You went to West. You didn't play for my friend Weston Sharts, though, did he?
I did not. And I went to Northeast Magnet.
Yeah.
So I played football at Heights my freshman and sophomore year, and then West my junior and senior year.
Okay.
And then I went to Friends.
Yeah. And how much was activism and public service kind of on your mind then?
It wasn't. I didn't really start becoming an activist until I was 19. It made the news. I got arrested when I was 19 for basically speaking up, speaking my mind, and I shouldn't have. And I worked with 3 officers who I kind of knew from a mentorship program I was in with Mr. Tommy Benford. And they really challenged me to focus on policy rather than just not liking the police. And so that kind of started the whole activism piece. When I was playing football, it was how can I be the best I can be? Yeah. How can I go pro? And then take care of my family in that way. And, that didn't work out. So I'm still here.
So you talked about, not wanting to be an elected official. Did that ever really change? Did it change during your campaign? Did it change during the first term? Was there a point where you felt like you could make a bigger difference as an elected official more than maybe an activist?
I felt that way probably 3/4 of the way through my first campaign. Before that, I was doing it. I wanted to be a council member because I thought I had the right abilities to be a council member. But I remember talking through issues at doors, and I was like, I think I can do this. I think I can bring people together. And I'll say my first year for sure, I didn't have a moment where I said, what did I get myself into? I just said, it's a lot. So how can I really manage my time with, family and these issues and being in the community? My goal was to make it a full-time job, even though it's part-time, and that's all I did. When I woke up, I was Councilmember Johnson. When I went to sleep, I was Councilmember Johnson. But I really liked making that impact, and I saw how much influence you really can have as an elected official. You don't have to be one to make change, but being one really helps you be at the table and help people where you can.
At a national level, there's probably a lot of people that see a big difference between public service and politics. How big of a difference is there at the local level, and do you consider politics a public service still here in 2026?
I think being an elected official is a public service, and the politics of it is when you start playing word games in the community rather than addressing the issue. We can get into partisanship. We can talk about those things. We can throw out red meat for a base, but at the end of the day, what are you going to do? And if you can actually find a solution and find compromise, which I think is still seen as a bad word sometimes, I think you make it out. We found compromise on the efforts that we had with housing regulations, and it wasn't everything I wanted, but we also got a lot of what I wanted. And I think other people who had concerns got what they wanted out of it too. So the politics of it is when you start doing things and saying things that I think kind of play to sway public opinion rather than just actually addressing those issues and being truthful and honest about it.
What will you miss the most about being in City Council?
Probably just being able to help with little things, because I deal with so many of them. So most of these issues are a big issue to someone. If there's a dead tree on the block, that's their number one issue. But just being able to help, like somebody who may not be able to navigate City Hall, calling, and I've got this issue, and me making a phone call or shooting an email and it's addressed, and just being able to address those issues for people every day. I'll miss that. I will miss the smiles on people's faces when those issues got addressed or some major policy victory, and seeing the impact of that. So I think about like the Brewer Center that just opened. There were a lot of people who didn't believe that would ever happen. And then there were people who did not believe it would look the way it does. And then seeing them when we opened it, and just all the smiles and energy in that space, to just be like, wow, it's here and it's incredible. Like, those are the things I'll miss.
This might be a weird question, but I was thinking, anytime anybody starts a job, there's a nervousness, I don't really know what I'm doing. And you talked about maybe connecting someone with someone who could clean up a tree on the yard. Did you know who to connect people with like day one, or how did you learn the resources that people needed to take care of their problems?
I spent a lot of time with staff. So, me and Bob would talk, and I would just ask him, if I get this, who do I talk to? I know I can talk to you, you're the manager, but can I talk to directors? Because you're supposed to have a barrier between you and city staff. That barrier is the manager. And he had a great relationship with council where, we could talk to the directors but CC him. And so after a while, I kind of figured out who to talk to. And if I could not send it to him and say, hey, I don't know who to send this to, but this is an issue, can we help out on that? But it was really spending time with staff. I spent a lot of time my first 6 months talking to directors, just trying to learn everything and learn what they did, learn who to reach out to. I had a great CSR when I started, in Camila Alexander. So I really could just talk to her, and she knew everybody in the city. So, she really helped me out quite a bit.
You talked about the Brewer Center, of course, that kind of comes toward the end of your second term. What are some of your other prouder accomplishments? Obviously the McAdams renovations, I know, are at the top of the list, and how much joy do you find in bigger accomplishments, these tangible things that everybody sees, versus maybe only one person can really see a difference?
Yeah, so I'm not an ego guy. There's a lot of policies I was able to influence to get change that people will never know I had a part of, and I'm good with that. I just wanted to see the impact. I think the things I'm most proud about are quality of life impacts. I grew up poor, so I've said it several times, parks and libraries were a big deal for me. We've made a lot of investments in parks. We renovated all our branch libraries. We expanded Maya Angelou. They all look better. They have more art in there, so we made those investments. So all of those tangible things that people can see and experience, I'm really happy about, because I know that will make a long-term impact. But then policy-wise, we did a lot. You know, we focused more on small business, not just our large employers. Sometimes that was controversial for some people, but you know, the goal was to make sure you can make less investment, hire less people, and still take advantage of city incentives. So doing those things, getting the Propel revolving loan fund for small businesses, having access to capital was an issue. A lot of our Eco-Devo things we did around spec buildings, all of that. All of those things I'm excited about, but probably most excited about quality of life, tangible things. And the Chester Lewis Reflection Park downtown. I mean, that park is amazing. It tells a story of an amazing Wichitan and his true impact. And for people who, like me, initially didn't know he did all of that, now you can see it. You can see the story being told. You can read about it. You see the imagery there. For folks who heard about the Dockham sit-in and now know Wichita had the first sit-in in the nation, not everybody knows some of those folks are still alive. Like Dr. Galen Vesey still here. So being able to see those names and connect to those people, like all of that is amazing. And we have one more major park renovation coming with A. Price Woodard, but Councilmember Shepard will usher that one through.
You got to know my father a little bit. I don't know if that's at the top of your accomplishments list, but I saw it from one perspective, right? My dad working to get the statue back, the McAdams renovated. What goes on behind the scenes when that stuff is going on at McAdams, especially the reimagining and restructuring of the Jackie Robinson statue?
Yeah, that was a terrible day, and I think there were some interviews I cursed. I won't do it today, but what usually happens is something like that, I get notified by the chief of police. That day it was the chief and the park director that told me, and I kind of didn't believe it at first because that's just crazy to think somebody would take the statue, but then I got the pictures and it was true. And my goal at that point, your dad's an awesome guy, but my real thought immediately was the kids, and I knew we would get that statue back one way or another. We were going to raise that money. If I had to go out and beg whoever in the community for some money to get that statue back, like that was my #1 goal. And then the chief kind of called me and said, you know, we need to make sure this is like, you know, major news, and that way, you know, people can keep their eyes out, and that's what we did. We did our press conferences. I got updates regularly about what was going on. When they found the pieces of the statue, I was notified that morning, so I think I had a couple meetings. I canceled those to go out there and to see, but usually when a tragedy like that happens, we get a lot of messages either from a department head. I talked to the city manager shortly after that, but my goal was to make sure that the kids had that statue back because I knew what it meant for them. I knew what it meant for the community, and we had put too much effort in investing in McAdams Park to just allow that to go missing like that. So since then, we've beefed up security, we beautified it even more, and it looks even better today, and Jackie's up higher.
Absolutely. Were you surprised that it went as crazy as it did as a national story?
Oh yeah, yeah, I didn't expect that. I thought every news station here would talk about it, and I was hopeful that some business or philanthropist would make an investment, but then, you know, when I'm on national news talking about it, but you know, Jackie Robinson, you know, he made that type of impact, and League 42's made that impact here in Wichita, and you know, just so many families. I've met coaches from around the country who came in when all that happened, who were just inspired by League 42 and again Jackie Robinson, and they wanted to support, and I was just glad to see it come back. I felt really proud to have all of that support from around the country, and I'm sure your dad knows people were calling me, how do I give, and what's Bob's number and email, and it's like, here you go. And so I'm just glad to see everything worked out.
What do you think in 2026 and beyond that local politics can teach us, everybody, about bipartisanship, working across the aisle, like you said, compromise? Don't necessarily see a ton of that at the highest level, so how can city politics still kind of reflect that example?
I think if people pay attention, you generally know, especially just speaking about me, you know who I am and kind of where I stand. I'm pretty vocal about that, and you saw that. One of my colleagues, Dalton Glasscock, now the vice mayor, you know, we would go back and forth sometimes, but I think people would also see when we would come up with a compromise together. And it was never mean-spirited. You know, we didn't speak ill of each other. We had different views, different ideas, and then we found a way to come together. And the times where we didn't and he was on the majority vote, you know, we had to accept that. It was 4-3 or whatever the vote was. And the same when it was on my way. But I think people see us really trying to talk about the issues. Let's talk about the pros and the cons and really come together on that. The good thing is the political parties locally, and they've gotten a little more involved, but not as involved as you see nationally. So sometimes you got to tune that noise out, and we just need to figure out what's going to be best for people and work through that. And I hope that people see that, don't think of your side always has to be right, because like I said in my farewell address, I've been wrong as well. But we need to really see each other, hear each other, and try to work through those things.
You were active before in the community before you were a city councilman. I know you're taking some downtime now, but are you thinking about the next way you can be active in the community after being a city councilman?
Yeah, you know, when I'm sitting on the couch right now, I'm thinking through that. You know, definitely need a break after all of that, because it is a lot. You need to decompress, but definitely looking at ways I can be helpful. And I've told Councilmember Shepherd, you know, I'll be helpful if he needs or wants. But definitely talking issues. I think there's a role for me in trying to help the community understand how council works and how local government works and the budget process, especially with the sales tax coming up. So I think if I can help the community be more informed, and if there's an issue, I still have people's cell phone number in City Hall. I won't be bugging them too much, but you know, hey, can we have a meeting? Can we talk through this and get people engaged? I think that's the best way to do it. That was what I did before I was on council, was talking through issues, bringing parties to the table, and rather than attacking, you know, what's the information and how can we make things better?
Is there a run for mayor in your future, perhaps?
You know, I don't know. I'm not saying no to anything. I said I would never be an elected official, and I served 2 terms, so what I have said is I will listen to everyone, and if there's a way I can be helpful and people want me to do it, I'll definitely consider it.
You obviously endorsed Joseph Shepherd for District 1. What did you notice early on about him, or how do you think maybe his ideas will vary from some of yours for maybe the better for Wichita?
Well, I definitely think it'll be better. Joseph is someone I've known for a number of years, maybe a decade or more, and when I look for a council candidate, more so than party, I look at the type of person they are, how they think, can they bring people together, can they methodically work an issue and not just be, you know, talking points or saying something that sounds good. And Joseph's never been that. And I've watched him. I watched him as student body president. I've watched him engage. Joseph is probably way better than me on social media. You can look and see that now. But he will engage with the young Wichitans. He can engage with our more seasoned Wichitans. He's better on social media. He's willing to have the tough conversations. He has ideas that are different than mine. He's been right. I always joke with him about the apartment complex on 21st and Oliver. That was one that Brandon Johnson did not want to see. But Joseph had a vision for, there hasn't been investment there in 30, 40 years, and it could be good, and it's right next to WSU. And he worked to push that through on the district advisory board, and since they supported it, I ended up supporting it, and it's been good. You know, people live there, that's more housing. We're still in a housing shortage, but you know, he saw that. And so for me, I knew what I had been dealing with, and I knew how I navigated, and I thought he'd be the perfect person for District 1 to be in that space.
What does the downtime include for you? Planning any travel? You want to go anywhere? You want to see anything? Or is it just, man, I need a rest?
All of that. So I would love to take a solo trip. I've been thinking about that and where. I've got to freshen up my resume. I realized I hadn't done that in over a decade, so I've got to, you know, get that up to date and get back on the job market. But definitely resting, spending more time with the family, annoying my girls, making sure homework is done, making sure those rooms are clean. Picking them up and spending time with them and just trying to relax and not be out as much, and probably ease back into it in the spring.
As a former football guy, I got to ask you your Super Bowl pick. 4 teams left as we sit here on January 20th. Do you have a couple favorites in mind?
You know, I don't know. Seattle's looking really good. I didn't think they would beat the 49ers the way they did, and they've got a lot of momentum right now. And I kind of think they may pull it out. They'll at least get to the big game, I think. Past that, I'm just really watching. I hadn't really had a lot of time this year to watch football. I've just been focused on trying to finish out my term. So I've just enjoyed the last couple of games. Was surprised about Indiana. I thought Miami might get that one, but they did a great job, and man, their quarterback's awesome. So as a former quarterback, you know, love quarterbacks. That keeper to get that touchdown was great. So yeah, we'll see.
And you know, I asked you about District 1. What about Wichita overall? What does the city mean to you? What can be its future? What are the pie in the sky visions that you would have for Wichita in the near and long term future?
Wichita, I think, finds itself where it was when I ran. I felt like we were on the precipice of being great or settling, and historically, Wichita settles. We'll see something and say it's too big or it's too expensive, and can we do it? And then we don't. And then we continue to have the problems with talent retention and all of that, and I think we're back in that space. The sales tax is one of those things where we vote to invest in ourselves. And some of the areas not everybody likes. I get it. It's not the perfect package, but is there ever going to be a perfect package? But my hope is that this council and Wichita will begin to look at investing in ourselves and doing big things because we can. And I also said that in my farewell address. We're like in the 2-minute drill right now. We're down 3. Are we going to kick a field goal and just kind of settle for going into overtime, or are we going to go for it? I want to go for it, and I think we should go for it, and I hope the council and the community will too.
Well, I appreciate your time. Congratulations on 2 successful terms in our city council. We'll obviously all have our eyes on what you're doing moving forward. Brandon Johnson.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.